absolutely a lot of entertainment resources, entertainment news, and reading that aloud and saying it aloud, and a lot of jokes and bluffing and teasing, joking, a lot of gestures, motions, movements, and multiple meanings, a lot of laughter and giggling, comment, and jokes, for example. And the man individual person said, accepting for so-called, for example, certain our own national security SS, NS, national security NS, our country security is CS, our country security is CS, and there's absolutely usually no procrastination. Instead, it's nearly all about, for example, our national security NS, our national security NS, our country security is CS, our country security is CS, and a very cleared mindset, extremely unassimilated, prolonged omission, unassimilated, unassimilated, prolonged omission, not assimilated, prolonged omission, not assimilated. And you're welcome. And different resource monies in the man individual person said that they're basically sole providers and producers and creators, sole for all intents and purposes, for nearly all intents and purposes, essentially subjective and objective, objective. So there's basically about sole producers, sole providers, sole creators, and creators, producers, and providers, and resources. For example, probably about 2 out of 2. 2 out of 2, 3 out of 3, probably not. 3 out of 3, probably not. About 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 61%, about 61%, and about 70, 80, 90, 100%, absolute percent, And they're sort of saying at the very least you'll be about 1 or 2% of your systems would survive, almost certainly. This book, little movie script, book, little writing jokes, for example, within probably about 5 or 6 days, maybe about 1 or 2 months at the very most. About 1 or 2 months at the very most, about 1 or 2% of your systems would probably survive. Probably about 1 or 2% of your systems would survive in about 5 or 6 days, from then. And maybe about 1 or 2 months, or about 5 or 6 days, or about 1 or 2 months. And very important energies, money, supplies, materials, and resources, so called one of a kind, 2 of a kind, 3 of a kind, and for instance, and often the opposite of prolonged long duration procrastination, in this book, the move script, and our real national security and country security is, for instance, so-called real clear and concise, in the absence of prolonged long duration confusion. For what it's worth, it usually doesn't matter that much in this book, the move script, but often it's the absence of prolonged long duration confusion, and it's that clear conciseness and reality, the reality, TR, the reality, TR, and the reality is TR, and the reality is TR. In this book, little movie script, a very excellent, finding good about hours of time, and very appropriate and safe and sound about hours of time. We either saw a lot of entertainment resources, a lot of jokes and bluffing and teasing and joking, a lot of bluffing and teasing and joking, reading aloud and saying it aloud, and for example, the man in the middle person said, paraphrase, sort of continue with the continuation, and then completed, victory, accomplishment, different accomplishments, money, supplies, materials, resources, accomplishments, and awards, recognitions, evaluations, and accomplishments, and resources, monies, and awards, and recognition, and awards, and accomplishments, and the family members and friends might say, oh, they remember those accomplishments, those awards, rewards, evaluations, recognitions, awards, accomplishments, awards and recognition, evaluations, recognitions, and awards. For example, of course we remember in your family members, FMs, and family friends. And for example, maybe extrapolation and generalization, extrapolation, inference, extrapolation and generalization and inference, and extrapolation, generalization, inference. For example, for instance, is so-called. They might also, the man and the person said, you might want to be aware of those so-called ice ages, or cold ages, or ice ages, or snow ages, and about projected in about 50 or 60 years, in this book, that are movie script that might last about 5 or 10,000 years, not quite about 11 or 12,000 years, very likely not quite about 11 or 12,000 years, allegedly, and sort of slowing down in many comics, and pre-ice age and pre-snow age and pre-cold age, pre-ice age, pre-snow age, cold ages, and sort of absolutely sort of warnings, cautions, alerts, warnings, cautions, alerts, cauterize, ward off, seed off, completed. Contain, ward off, seed off, completed, approximately 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%, absolute percent. Ward off, seed off, contain, ward off, seed off, cauterize, ward off, seed off, completed, approximately 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%, absolute percent. Ward off, seed off, cauterize, ward off, completed, contain, ward off, seed off, completed, approximately 60, 70, 80, 90, 100%, absolute percent. Very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time, very appropriate and safe and sound about 100% of the time. Please have a good afternoon, evening, and thank you very much if you so choose to decide. Thank you very much. If you so choose to decide in that book, Little Movies Good Breeding, there's a lot of entertainment resources, a lot of jokes and bluffing and teasing, joking the man, individual person said, paraphrase, quotation, summarize, abbreviate, a lot of laughter and gig and comedy jokes, and absolutely, and you know, a lot of entertainment resources, acting stages, acting studios, and you're welcome, you're welcome. And thank you, and thank you. And very excellent, fine and good about 100% of the time. Very appropriate and safe and sound about 100% of the time. And we're real family members. FMs are family members. FMs are family friends. For example,